There we go. All right, are my slides showing up on your screen then?
Yeah, let me see if I can full screen. It is full. Chrome is full screen. All right. Well.
No. You go to view. View presentation mode.
There we go. Okay.
There we go. That'd be easier.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. There we go. We can see your slides.
Okay. Awesome. So, for anyone that's watching this is you guys are the Raleigh Meteor Meetup, right?
Yes.
All right. So.
We're in Durham.
Durham. Nice. Okay. So, I'm giving a talk on hosting and scaling with Meteor.js. If you don't know me, I'm Josh Owens. You can find me at this plethora of places below. I run the Meteor podcast. I do kind of like a weekly blog post and email called Meteor.js Club, and I also run Crater. So feel free to check any of that stuff out. So when it comes to Meteor, you have actually quite a few options for hosting now. Probably the simplest and the easiest is just hosting on the Meteor.com infrastructure. And you can just do like a Meteor deploy and then give it an app name, and it'll deploy at that subdomain. So if we say like Meteor deploy talks, then talks.meteor.com will be your app. And then they tie that to your Meteor developer user account for security purposes. So someone else can't deploy your app unless you give them permission to. I think that this is great for prototyping or showing off to a client or showing off at a demo or anything like that. But for me, the Meteor.com hosting has a few downsides. One of them is like, who do you email when something is busted or goes down? There's really no official support behind it. You could probably go hassle Slava, who might be watching this, on Twitter, and maybe he'll help you and maybe fix it. And maybe that's changed, but that was my experience quite a while ago. The other thing is you don't really get full access to the environment, so you can't really figure out what your Mongo string is for connection and like remotely looking at your database. There's really no way to like scale up and have more app servers handling things. So it's a really basic solution right now, but they are working on Galaxy. I'm guessing we'll see something within the next 6 months from them for officially hosting production apps. But for now, like I would, this is great for doing little tests, but I would not put a production app here. Next up is Modulus. So this is what the dashboard kind of looks like here. This is an older screenshot. It may have changed a little bit here and there, but basically what you get there is it's a platform as a service. So they give you little containers, they call them servos, that run your app. And so you do like a Meteor deploy, or not a Meteor deploy, Modulus deploy. You install their little command line tool from NPM, and then you can do the Modulus deploy, and it'll ask you like to log in, and then it'll ask you which app you're deploying if you have more than one app, and then it'll take that code and it'll I think the process is that they compress it and ship it to their server. They recognize that it's a Meteor app, and they do all the proper things on their end to host that Meteor app. The only gotcha with Modulus is that you have to set up a lot of the environment variables, and you have to set up the database. Like that stuff is not automatic with them. And so you can go into their admin interface and create a Mongo database and stuff. But I wouldn't even really recommend that. Like if you're doing production, I would host with Modulus, but I'd probably put my data over on compose.io. And I didn't put a slide in here for them, but we can talk about that at the end too. They do great Mongo hosting. And I think the key here with them is, one, they cost about $15 a month for a servo. Two, they do sticky session tracking for their router, which means that you can scale out beyond just one servo. So the way that you would scale out on Modulus, you would probably host with something like compose.io and get an oplog enabled Mongo database, and then hook that up to your Modulus setup using environment variables. And then anytime you need to handle more traffic, you just tell it to just boot more servos. There's a little slider, and you go from 1 to 4, whatever you need, and then just hit apply, and it'll spin those up for you. It's pretty quick, and then they've got nice logs in there and that kind of stuff as well. So for me, I host some of my apps at Modulus, some of them at Heroku, and some of them on DigitalOcean. So I can kind of speak to the differences once we get to the questions portion. Heroku is the other kind of easy hosting solution. The only thing that I would say is with Heroku, you use what they call build packs. So they have little containers as well, and they call them, gosh, what do they call those things? Dynos. And they're little containers that run your app as well. But they use Git to ship your code up there, and then if you're not using Rails, then you need to give them a build pack, which is essentially like a series of bash scripts that tell Heroku what needs to be installed in order to run your app. And so there's a large community effort, you can go out there and look, of Heroku Meteor build packs. But the latest one that seems to work with 1.0 is called the horse build or something like that. I can find the link and put it up somewhere. But I've got an article that kind of compares all these, and I link to the horse build pack. But it does a good job. The gotcha here is that they don't do sticky sessions for their routing, so you can run into trouble because they're doing login tracking, and that's all kind of dependent on the sticky session stuff. So if you scale to more than one, you may start to run into some weird issues. So it's great. You can host for free there for your first dyno. I think if you don't have a high traffic site, Heroku does a great job, and their add-on marketplace has a lot of options as far as the Meteor or the Mongo hosting. And I think by default, when you use the horse build pack, it installs the free Mongo hosting option for you. So the third option is just hosting it on your own, and there are numerous ways you could set that up. I mean, you could use Ansible or Docker or Chef or any of this stuff. But the easiest tool to get started with is Meteor Up. It's a package from Aeronota, and basically it's some scripts that you have that you can run. It uses SSH to put your app over on the server, and so you do Meteor Up, I think setup or something along those lines, and then once it's been set up, it'll install Node, and it'll install, if you wanted to, you can tell it to install Mongo. Again, I still use Compose for when I'm using Meteor Up because I want that oplog capability from them. And then once it's set up, you just say Meteor deploy, and it'll grab the current version that's in the folder, and it'll ship it up to the server for you, and deploy it, and then restart everything. So Meteor Up's taking care of the upstart scripts and installing everything, and then it's also your deploy command. And so you can use this with any hosting provider like Linode or DigitalOcean or Amazon EC2. So pretty basic option, but I think it probably gives you the most flexibility in the long run. is if you're hosting on your own, and then like you control the routing and that kind of stuff. So you can set up your own load balancer and make sure it's done the right way. All right, so the other part of this talk is scaling. I think the biggest piece for scaling when it comes to Meteor is Mongo itself. And in 0.7 they added oplog support, and basically what that is a fancy way to say that you're going to set up a Mongo replica, and you have a master server and you have a slave server, or a primary and secondary, and the secondary servers listen to a special collection called oplog, and it's basically a list of data changes that are happening in the primary at any given time. And so those secondaries are listening to that and pulling it down and applying those changes. Well, Meteor has, with their oplog support, they just act like they're a secondary, and they listen to that oplog, and they sit there and they process all those data changes that are coming through on the Mongo server, and they're applying that. And so down on the server side of Meteor, they have what's called a merge box, which is the way that they're tracking what data the clients that are connected are interested in, and so they're able to look at the changes that are coming in, and then based on what's in the merge box, they can push that down to the client. So if you're subscribed to some data that's changed, they'll know you're subscribed, they'll see the change came, and they'll push it down the DDP pipe to you. And so that's kind of how you scale Mongo out. But the problem is, this is really kind of a double-edged sword. So the problem that oplog fixes is the fact that if you have more than one Meteor server in place, you're going to have update delays by default without oplog turned on, without the oplog support enabled. So what happens is, like, server A may run an update and send something to the database. It gets saved. Server A already knows that that data has changed, but server B doesn't have any way to know that it's changed. So what happens in regular Meteor without oplog is it's going to sit there and run what they call a pull and diff, and they're going to query the server and say, were there any changes on this data, and then they're going to see that the data changed, and it's going to ship back down to server B, and then any client that's connected that's subscribed to that data is then going to see that change. But that code was running like every 10 seconds, so you're getting a 10-second delay rather than full real time. So the way to get around that is to use oplog. So that's kind of what we were solving with the oplog change. But the issue there is, if you're pushing too much data into the Mongo server, there's no way to say, I only want to subscribe to this data from the oplog. It's all going to come down. So, like, if you're pushing a ton of data into Mongo, you may actually start to run into performance issues again, like CPU spike issues, where like it's sitting there and trying to process all those oplog changes, and it may not even care about all of them, but it still has to process through them all. So I've seen other people like Aaron Oda and Kadira. He's actually got two databases. He's got one that's sitting there. It's fronted by a Node API. The data comes in from the applications, goes into the first Mongo database. Then he runs aggregation queries and then pushes the aggregate data into the client-connected Mongo database. And so that's one way you could deal with having too much data being inserted into a Mongo database. So I touched a little bit on the merge box, but that's another place where you kind of have to worry about the scaling when it comes to CPU and memory. So the merge box kind of eats up the memory on the node side. So the more clients that you have running a subscription on a Meteor server, the more memory is going to be used. As far as I know. And then the thing to be concerned about with the CPU is, whether you're running pull and diff or are you running the oplog, how much is coming through, like I mentioned before, and then what kinds of things are you doing on the back end server side as well. So in particular, like I helped build a fantasyhub.com website that did real-time fantasy sports where you build a team. And when a game would become active on the server side, we were checking every minute to see if a game was active. And then once a game became active, we started pulling in the stats every 20 seconds for all the players in that game. And some of that stuff got a little CPU intensive. So, that's another thing to kind of consider when you're writing your code. So that's kind of it for now. Does anyone have any questions?
As far as the experience you've had deploying on the different options, is there one that you have a personal preference for?
My personal preference would be Modulus probably first, and then DigitalOcean would be second. And I would say it just really depends on how comfortable you feel with running your own server. If you feel comfortable, I'd say go with DigitalOcean.
And you use Meteor up with that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question now. If you are using Modulus, how long does it usually take before you have to scale? I mean, I know it varies, but how many users can you get on consistently before you find that you have to start scaling outward?
So early on, we found it was somewhere around. Whoops, I'm logging as the wrong person here. We found it was somewhere around like 70 to 100 people could be connected, but with Oplog, that number's actually gone up pretty significantly. So again, like if you're using Oplog-enabled hosting, then that works out pretty well. Wrong account. Actually, don't know that I have anything running here right now. Yeah, I don't.
So you talked a lot about Composer.io as a good hosting Mongo option. I had never heard of that. The two I had heard of was Mongo HQ and Mongo Lab. Do those not offer the Oplog, or do you know anything about those two?
Okay, so Mongo HQ changed their name, and it's now Compose.io.
All right, there you go. Thanks.
They decided they were going to get into more than just Mongo, so they're doing, you can see here, they've got these words changing here. They're doing Mongo and Elasticsearch and Rethink and Redis is the last one. And yeah, so they've got Oplog enabled, and I'm pretty sure Mongo Lab now has an Oplog enabled option as well. So I definitely check them out, but for me, like, I know the Mongo HQ guys, they do a good job. I've had like no downtime whatsoever. I also love the UI that you get right here. And so I can log in and show you. You can see kind of real time what's going on with Crater.
So Compose helps manage like your shards and all that, or do you have to set that up manually? Like, how well? I haven't worked much personally with MongoDB prior to Meteor, so I'm just starting to learn about the shards and the Mongo config versus the shards.
Yeah,
like there's
actually,
settings and.
I haven't done any sharding with Mongo yet in regards to Meteor. So I couldn't really answer that question.
Sure.
Let's see, admin. No, that's not what I want either. Where's the nice screen? Huh. No alerts. Oh, here it is, monitoring. There we go. And so if I load Crater, we'll start seeing some spikes here.
Is Crater currently being hosted on a DigitalOcean with Compose?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I wrote an article that kind of compared the three, and this is where it ended up. So this was kind of the last option that I did, so I never moved it anywhere else after that. But the whole time that I was testing all three platforms, I kept the data at Compose, and that made it very easy to move because I just had to set that Mongo URL directly to the Compose database. And so I wasn't transferring any data anywhere. I was really just deploying some Meteor files and then pointing it back here to get it working.
And you're able to set up the environment or the Mongo URL via the Meteor Up settings, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me pull up that. Show you what it looks like. There's just a JSON file that you create, and you just tell it like the host username and password, or if you're using SSH keys, just point it at your key, and then you just tell it like, set up Mongo as false for me, but set up Node as true, so it'll install the Node version. I tell it to install Phantom. Give it the app name. Just Crater, and then you point it at, I don't know why he does this, but you point it at your local user directory, like where the app is located, and then you just set these environment variables here. And so
I think it doesn't it zip. It like packages it up and zips it up locally and then pushes it.
Yeah, but it seems like this piece he could probably just guess from your current location.
True.
So I don't know. That option seemed a little weird to me, but it works well.
And so Compose is pretty much just like a one-click install kind of thing, or is there some configuration that goes into initially setting it up in a new project?
Yeah, it's just pretty much a one-click. The other thing you do is you go into the admin section and just set up your user accounts.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you can see, like, it's not, I mean, there's a ton of posts and comments and whatnot on there, and I mean, it's only a 48 meg file size total, and the data size is 8.29 megs. So it's not, Mongo doesn't take up a lot of space necessarily.
Sure.
The other thing I would recommend is installing Kadira, and it gives you insight into what your Meteor app is doing. Let me go back to the dashboard here. So you can see, like, the pub sub response time is hovering around 100 right now. The method response times, they spike every once in a while. These are probably posts if we go dig deeper. CPU usage seems to hover around 10% usually. And there's about 64 to 65 people connected right now. Kind of shows you your memory usage as well. And then you can dig into the pub sub here, and we can sort by response time. And we can see whenever someone pulls up a user profile, this seems to be the slowest publication. But if you look, it doesn't have a high sub rate. It's like 0.02 per minute. Whereas like this post list users, it's 287 milliseconds, but we're getting about a half a sub a minute, a little over. So this would be a good place to maybe optimize and dig in and look. You can look at the chart here. We can click on the response time, and then you can actually pull up a trace of the subscription, and you can see post list was the slowest returner, and actually for some reason it got ran twice. So 3 times actually. So there's probably some kind of optimization in here that could be done in the subscriptions to make this a little faster. So.
Do you have any thoughts about the best way to set up your collections in Mongo?
The best way to what?
Collections in Mongo. You know how you set up your document structure. Have you had any experience of doing it one way that works better than another?
Yeah, so I think to me, like, I tend to denormalize my data a lot of times. So I'll have collections for each kind of thing in an app. So, for instance, I do a training class and we build a Twitter clone, and in that one, I've got users and tweets, and we've got the idea of mentions. Those are tracked separately. Gosh, what else is in there? I think that's about it right now. It's pretty basic, but I try to keep those in separate collections, and then we do lookups based on the keys that are being passed in. Does that answer your question, or were you looking for something different?
No, that's what I was looking.
And your most recent post kind of touches on that, the comments one, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So, kind of a fun way to drive a join. In here, I take an ID off the route, so like /post/ID, and then I subscribe to both the post and the post comments based on that post ID. So it's kind of an easy way to get that data to flow in correctly without having to go to too much trouble.
I have a question.
Sure.
This might be too far of an aside, but have you looked at PureDB? And do you have any thoughts on that kind of merging?
So I haven't actually used it. As far as I can tell, this is only a Meteor thing, and it looks like it's really just a layer on top of Mongo. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this, honestly. Like, I haven't investigated it at all. But I mean, it could be interesting. I just, again, like I'd prefer, for this piece of my architecture, I'd probably prefer something that's from MDG itself right now. But there are other interesting things you can do as well. Like, I've got some blog posts in the hopper. One of them is about consuming DDP data as a client, but I'm also trying to get someone to write consuming, like, an interview style post about consuming DDP data from a different server. And so I've got some guys I know here in Cincinnati. They've created an Elixir app, and they've created a DDP server for that, and they're exposing the Elixir app to Meteor through DDP. And so they're able to just say, like, meteor.subscribe, and they can point at the Elixir server, and the data starts flowing out that way. So I mean, the possibilities are endless when you think about it from that standpoint. You could go make a Rails app backed by MySQL and use the DDP library for Ruby and, like, start publishing data that way as well. So there are a lot of options out there.
Last night I was made aware of a Mongo Commerce site specifically. Kevin, do you remember the name of it?
I think that's
MongoCommerce.com.
Is that MongoCommerce.com? No.
Maybe a hyphen in there.
Forward.
Are you thinking about Reaction Commerce or Reaction Commerce?
Yeah, so these guys are building Reaction Commerce, which is built in Meteor. Is this maybe what you were thinking of?
Well, this was actually a presentation by somebody. It was a .NET presentation.
Oh,
okay. He was using a site called Mongo Commerce, and the rates that they were charging for space and processing on their site were really cheap.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. Well, did anyone else have any more questions?
I did have one more, and this may be antithetical to the philosophy behind Meteor, but with the reactivity built in, but have you looked at caching at all as an option to improve performance?
I honestly I haven't really had to think about that a whole lot. I would think, if that's a concern, you could probably move some data to Redis. Redis is pretty zippy. But again, I know that there are people that have also worked on sharding, so that's another way you could probably enhance performance without getting too crazy. Abigail Watson's done some stuff there, I think, with sharding. But no, I really honestly haven't gotten to the point where I've had to cache a whole lot. I can't think of any instance where I've cached anything.
By the way, this is Ty Moodley was the presenter was one of the presenters, so this may just be his thing. He called it Mongo Commerce.
Yeah. He needs docs. Someone should email him and say, write some docs, man.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah. August.
Okay for presentations.
Yeah.
So one more question. On the Heroku side, you mentioned you've tried a couple of different build packs, and the best one was something with horse in the name, which I thought was weird.
Well, so it's funny because if you read through the comments, I think he even says somewhere on his GitHub page or something, he's like, I went with horse because why not?
Do you think is that like a rapidly evolving space, or you think people are coming around and starting to condense on that one? So I guess full disclosure, I work on a product that's built on Cloud Foundry, which is also built on build packs, but I have no idea what direction to head in terms of hosting, whether we should use kind of straight Node.js or whether we should use a specific build pack dedicated to Meteor.
I would use a specific build pack dedicated to Meteor. This is the horse build pack. So it's admit hub / meteor-build pack-horse. And basically, the reason this one works and the others don't is because no one's maintaining the older ones. And when 09 came out, obviously with Meteorite going away and the native package system coming into play, they had to make some changes to the scripts, and so this guy's kind of been keeping it up to date, and it seems to work well. So, oh yeah, here, why horse? There are a gazillion forks and branches of various build packs remixing the words Heroku, build pack, and Meteor, many of which are abandoned or outdated or broken, and it's really hard to keep them straight. So this is the horse one. And it works. I remembered, the horse build pack.
As documentation goes, it's okay.
Is this guy or this community like active in the community, or is it just some random guy? Or
no. Charles Ditar. I hope I said his name right. I've seen him helping out with Velocity as well. So. I don't think it's random. You can see here he's got commits from this month and last month. So I honestly, like, this space probably isn't changing that much anymore. So with 09 there were big changes, and then when 10 came out, something broke the older build packs again, and so he had the fix for that. And then there's not been a whole lot that's happened since then. You can see, like, most of this is just README stuff from the looks of it.
Yeah, I got burned by trying an old one and it didn't work. And then I went to the Node.js one and got it to work using instructions on the Meteor site. And
yeah.
Then, that was the way I was going to go. I still am sort of leaning that way, but maybe I'll keep an eye on this one and see. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. And the other thing to consider, too, that was weird for me with Heroku hosting is that a lot of the build packs use some kind of like node version detection. Let's see if we can find it in here. Compile. Yeah, somewhere in here. Yeah, they use this semvar.io/node/resolve. And for some reason, it was coming back with a weird version. it wasn't coming back with the version I wanted. So you can manually override that as well with your own version, and I would recommend that rather than letting it do this curl lookup. And you just somewhere in here, you just set, there's like a file you put in here, like a node version file. Man, my machine's slow today. Yeah, I don't know. I can't find it. But anyway, that was the one gotcha that I had. Is I ran into some problems because it was installing the wrong node version, basically, and it was because that curl call was coming back weird. So,
Was there anything that you wanted to, since you were so kind to do this presentation, that you wanted to tell us about? I know you do the Meteor Club thing. Did you want to?
Sure. Yeah. Just if you haven't, I'd say just go to meteorjs.club, pop in your email address and name, and you'll get like weekly emails about the blog posts that I'm doing, and I do a Q&A, so there's probably one coming up next week with Sam, who's watching, but I haven't set a date yet. So, like, I'll email that date out to the mailing list, and you can come and we'll kind of do like a live question and answer. I imagine a lot of that'll be about velocity. And then the other thing that I've started doing is Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/meteorclub, and if you sign up for like the $10 per month support, then you'll get access to the Slack chat room. So it's kind of fun. Got a couple people hanging out in there.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Josh.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
If you're ever down in the Raleigh-Durham area, you should contact us and come out for a beer.